So the worst kept secret in comic book films has finally been confirmed to be happening, as the Thunderbolts are going to be coming to the Marvel Cinematic Universe in the not too far off future. So I figured that now would be a good time to take a look at some of the more noteworthy people who have served as members of the team's roster. And I'll kinda sorta rank them because why not? That's what we do around here, so let's go ahead and do that. I'll rank them by power level because that's the easiest and honestly the most entertaining way to go. With all that being said, let's go ahead and dive right into it. The Tesseract gets a lot of attention within the MCU, more than pretty much any of the other Infinity Stones by far. And within comics, that's pretty much the case too. Although I guess the Soul Stone also has a lot of characters and storylines focused around it. I mean, heck, Adam Warlock is intrinsically connected to it. And you know, he's kind of a big deal some of the time. However, the Cosmic Cube holds a pretty interesting distinction, as it is the only one of the stones that was itself a member of a team. This is Kobik, a small girl who is literally just fragments of the Cosmic Cube that came together to form an entire person. And she is crazy powerful, as you would expect from an Infinity Stone that's become sentient and taken human form. Well, okay, I keep saying that the Cosmic Cube is an Infinity Stone, but that isn't technically correct. In the MCU, it is definitely the case. But within the comics, there are multiple Cosmic Cubes, and the Space Stone isn't actually associated with any of them. But even on their own, the Cosmic Cubes are still crazy powerful, able to like warp reality and stuff like that. So I think that my previous statement still stands. Kobik here wound up joining the Thunderbolts roster when she befriended the Winter Soldier, Bucky Barnes himself, and worked with him to form a new version of the team during the whole Hydra Cap ordeal, which Kobik was actually responsible for, as she was sort of brainwashed by Red Skull into turning Cap into a Hydra sympathizer by warping his perception of history and all that sort of stuff. But you know what? That's a story for an entirely different video. So here's a team member that is so new to the roster that the issue in which she joins isn't even out yet as of the recording of this video. Monica Rambeau, aka Spectrum, is going to be joining up with a new version of the squad in the first issue of the 4th volume of the Thunderbolts comic series this August. Therefore, I don't really actually have much to say about her time with the team. All I really have to go off of is the covers of the first 4 issues of that series, which, you know, don't really give us much. However, I feel comfortable putting Spectrum on this list because she is crazy powerful. Basically, she possesses the ability to manipulate any kind of energy within the electromagnetic spectrum, including being able to transform herself into pure energy. On top of that, she is a skilled leader and master combatant, meaning that she can dish out pain both solo and as part of a larger group. And she's been a longtime member of the Avengers, for God's sake, as well as quite a few other major high-profile teams. I think it's safe to say that she'll handle being a Thunderbolt no problem. Plus, Monica's already been set up within the MCU, so maybe she'll make an appearance on the MCU roster. I kinda doubt it because she doesn't really seem like the type that Valentina would recruit, and plus she's got the whole, you know, the Marvels thing, but you never know, it could happen. Ghost Rider is one of those characters that really should rank high on pretty much any list that he's included on. He may seem like a pretty B or C tier hero to most, but this guy is someone who Doctor Strange once said possessed power that might very well be limitless. And I mean, Cosmic Ghost Rider kind of proved that right. Although that's not actually Johnny Blaze, which is the version of the character that we're going to be talking about for this entry, so it kind of doesn't count. Blaze wound up joining up with the team assembled by Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross, who at the time was operating as the Red Hulk, in order to try to make the world a better place by doing the things that normal heroes often refuse to do. You know, the entire shtick of the Thunderbolts to begin with. For his part, Blaze didn't actually join the team until about 22 issues into the team's 31-issue run. But once he linked up with them, he started more than carrying his own with them, showing off why the Spirit of Vengeance is not someone to be trifled with. You know who else you shouldn't trifle with pretty much at all? Captain Marvel. And no, I'm not talking about Carol Danvers, though maybe don't mess with her either. Doesn't really seem like it'd be that good of an idea. No, I'm talking about one of the other people who have taken on the name. Specifically, the pseudo-son of the original Captain Marvel, Genis-Vell. At one point, Genis made his way to Earth, looking to get away for a bit in order to recover from a fairly alarming incident that had happened to him shortly prior. While there, he joined up with a newly reformed version of the team while operating under the alias Photon. That alias, by the way, did wind up causing just a little bit of tension, as at the time, Monica Rambeau was operating under that name, though that pretty quickly got sorted out and Genis was able to roll with it. Powers-wise, Genis possesses pretty much exactly the same strengths and weaknesses as you would expect from a variant of Captain Marvel, amplified even further by his use of the Kree Negabands, a pair of powerful bracers created by the Kree Empire. Though it's actually up for debate if the ones that he used are genuine Negabands or not, but either way, that's some really powerful stuff. What is a super team roster without Deadpool? You know, for such a solo-focused, lone wolf type character like Deadpool, he sure teams up with a lot of people. Honestly, it seems like he's teamed up with people more often than not. So, of course, he had a spot on one of the Thunderbolts rosters. Specifically, he was a member of Red Hulk's iteration of the Thunderbolts. You know, the same one that Johnny Blaze was also a part of. Honestly, looking at that entire roster for that version of the team, it was pretty stacked. You got people like Deadpool, who is nigh on unkillable, Elektra, who kicks just all of the ass, and the premier Marvel vigilante, Punisher. Probably why quite a few of the members are on this list. Not all of them, but you know, a good majority at least. In my opinion, it's probably the most powerful version of the roster ever. If you disagree with me, why don't you go down to those comments and we can fight it out. Respectfully, of course. Juggernaut has had quite the interesting history of super teams. This is a guy who your average comic book enjoyer pretty much only knows from that one ancient internet video. But he's been a part of some really powerful teams, ranging from the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants all the way to the Savage Avengers. And of course, amongst the teams that he was a part of was the Thunderbolts. He officially joined a version of the team headed up by Luke Cage after the events of the Siege of Asgard. Though his time on the roster was relatively short-lived, as he was benched after acting out of line during a mission, shortly before being chosen by a mystical hammer to become Kurth, Breaker of Stone, a souped-up version of himself that was borderline unstoppable. At least, more unstoppable than he already was, considering that being unstoppable is kind of Juggernaut's whole thing. Once he was stripped of the hammer's powers, however, he was once again offered a spot on the team by John Walker, which he accepted. He proceeded to serve on the team for a while after that, before having his Juggernaut powers taken away entirely, which spelled the end of his time on the team. How could I talk about the Thunderbolts and not mention the man who is most commonly associated with them, and seen as their de facto leader, Baron Helmut Zemo himself? Initially conceiving of the team as some sort of offshoot of the Masters of Evil, Zemo came up with the rather ingenious scheme of rounding up some lesser-known villains and having them disguise themselves as heroes in order to ingratiate themselves with the larger hero teams, all to try to gain access to their resources and databanks. And it kinda worked, as the group was accepted as genuine heroes, though it kinda started to backfire after a little bit, as doing more heroic deeds made the members of the initial Thunderbolts roster start to think of themselves as actual heroes, jeopardizing Zemo's plan. So eventually Zemo just revealed the identities of the entire team himself and just put a kibosh on the whole charade. While the initial purpose of the Thunderbolts ultimately failed, it wound up becoming somewhat of a heroic mainstay, serving in a sense as Marvel's equivalent to DC's Suicide Squad, a team of villains tasked with taking on some of the more morally dubious actions that needed doing, often in order to save the world. All thanks to a crackpot scheme by Baron Zemo. Karla Sofen, aka Moonstone, is one of the longest-serving members of the Thunderbolts, having been on the roster basically ever since the team was formed back in the old days as part of Zemo's evil plan. She even took on the role of Miss Marvel when the group was repackaged as Norman Osborn's Dark Avengers, a role that she took very seriously. Powers-wise, Karla can manipulate gravity, which is just insanely powerful, thanks to being infused with power from a Kree device. Seems like a lot of Marvel heroes got their start thanks to Kree tech. It's a bit of a running theme here at least. That being said, Karla has a pretty serious weakness that could be exploited by those who seek to take her out of commission. She has a serious tree nut allergy, which is just unfortunate. But hey, her and Black Noir from The Boys can be buddies, I guess. There have actually been a couple different versions of Venom who at one point or another have been members of the Thunderbolts. But the one that I want to highlight here is Matt Gargan. More commonly known by his villainous alias Scorpion, Gargan joined up with the team when it was tasked by the Avengers to hunt down members of the Secret Avengers, who had turned into wanted fugitives. He continued to serve with the team through the Dark Avengers era, being transformed by Osborn into a slimmer, more human-looking form, and taking on the name Spider-Man within the phony superhero team. With both Mac Gargan and now the Venom symbiote existing within the MCU, could we potentially see Gargan taking on the role of Venom and joining up with the MCU Thunderbolts? I kinda doubt that he will in this team's first outing, but hey, maybe someday down the line, we'll get to see him join up. Radioactive Man isn't just the name of a superhero from The Simpsons. It's actually a Marvel character as well. Chen Lu was once a nuclear physicist working within the People's Republic of China. After an experiment gone wrong, he was exposed to a whack ton of radiation, causing him to gain the ability to control and emit deadly radiation from his own body. Naturally, as one is wont to do, he used these powers to become a supervillain, joining up with the Masters of Evil before a short stint with the Thunderbolts. Despite his often monstrous actions, his heart is sorta in the right place, as he often does what he does because he thinks it is best for the people back in his homeland of China. A place, by the way, that he was actually barred from returning to due to the fact that he is deadly to pretty much anyone around him. Because, radiation isn't exactly great for the human body. Who would have guessed? Of course, Red Hulk had to be on here. As I said a few entries back, the version of the Thunderbolts that was headed up by General Ross was probably the most powerful one we've ever seen. So, of course, it would make sense to have that team's leader on here somewhere. Powers-wise, he's the Hulk. Like, they all basically can do the same things. Not really a lot that I can say about Red Hulk. But, come on. The guy's nickname is literally Thunderbolt. Having him as part of the roster is perhaps the most appropriate thing that I've ever heard in my life. Mach-X here is the perfect example of a comic character who is trying way too hard to be cool. That name alone should tell you that the dude takes himself just a tad bit too seriously. But that doesn't mean that he can't pack a wallop. Basically, Mach-X utilizes a specialized suit known as the Mobile Armored Cyber Harness, or Mach Armor for short. It's effectively a knockoff Iron Man suit, capable of sustained flight at high speeds with a multitude of different types of onboard ordnance, ranging from machine guns to heat-seeking missiles. And the guy in the suit, Abner Jenkins, ain't a slouch either, having led the team on a few occasions over the years. Speaking of leaders, I've got to at least mention Power Man himself, Luke Cage. Cage's time as leader of the Thunderbolts was relatively short, having taken the job at the request of Steve Rogers in order to provide select villains with a shot at redemption. Despite how short of a time it was a fairly eventful time. They recruited some of the most powerful members the team has ever seen, and even traveled through time, because of course they did. This is comics after all. However, by the time Bucky Barnes took over leadership of a version of the team alongside Kobik, Cage was a lot more preoccupied with his own business, leaving the Thunderbolting to others. I've spoken about Eric Jostin in a couple of videos in the past, but why not take this opportunity to bring him up at least one more time? This guy was mutated by leftover technology in an abandoned Masters of Evil base, becoming infused with ionic energy and transformed into an absolute giga-chad of a man, possessing immeasurable strength and the ability to grow to a massive size thanks to later experimentation with Pym particles. He even eventually joined Zemo's initial roster for the Thunderbolts, taking on the name Atlas. Despite being presented as a villain, Jostin commonly shows a desire to serve as a legitimate hero, which he has on numerous occasions, even holding a spot on the Defenders at one point. But through it all, the dude's a Thunderbolt at heart. Of course, at some point I had to bring up Yelena Belova, right? The second Black Widow. Here's the thing though. Belova was never actually a part of the Thunderbolts roster in earnest. In fact, the one time that the character was seen interacting closely with the team, it wasn't even actually Belova. It was instead Natasha Romanoff in disguise, having been sent in by Nick Fury to spy on the team. So why is she on the list then? Well, within the MCU, it looks like she is going to be a member of the team. So technically, she still fits within the parameters of this list. And if I could include Monica Rambeau, yet another character who is going to join the team in the future, that means that this entry is still totally valid. Plus, I just wanted an excuse to include Florence Pugh in this video. She's just absolutely adorable. I can't get enough of her. And can you really blame me on that one? I didn't think so. Hey there everybody, I'm John Aljets. I made this video and I want to know what you think. Are you excited to see the Thunderbolts join the MCU? Be sure to let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, or go ahead and shoot me a response over on Twitter. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe to CBR for more great videos just like this in the future.